Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in just a second, just giving everyone a chance to join. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk to us all today. Great. We will go ahead and get started. Again, as I mentioned, we really appreciate everyone being here today. We are really blown away from the interest of the competition overall and have had the opportunity to speak to a number of people in one-off conversations and over email. But it's always wonderful to speak to a group and hear and share a little bit more about the competition in general and get a sense from you on where you're most interested to learn more. That helps us inform the resources we create, kind of the FAQs that we continue to update. So we really appreciate you making the time today. I think overall, what I just want to mention before the beginning of this call is obviously the competition has to name winners. And yet the overall goal of this whole effort is to build a community and really connect people and identify people who are interested in similar goals. And at every point of this process, we do our best to connect people, to make partnerships, share resources, so that there are so many people and so many more tools and students and those in the field who benefit from the support of this competition, not just the impact of the winners. So with that, I just want to do quick introductions. A couple of people on our team. My name is Meg Benner. I'm the managing director of the Learning Agency, which is one of the organizations that's organizing the competition overall. And I'll hand it over to Kayla, who will introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Kayla Meyers. I'm a program director with the Learning Agency as well. I've had the opportunity to chat with a few of you over email and see you all at previous meetings. So just really excited that you all are taking the time to learn more about the tools competition and ask your questions in real time. I would love if everyone else, because there are some people that I'm not familiar with that I'm seeing in the participants list, can introduce themselves in the chat, just share your name, your organization, and potentially what you're kind of hoping to get out of this webinar. We want to respond to your questions and your needs. So if there is a particular point of interest that you have that you want us to clarify, a question that you have, please feel free to add that in the chat. We'll be collecting questions throughout this meeting. So any question you add there, we'll be able to get to once we hit the kind of Q&A portion of this webinar. Just as some additional housekeeping, this is being recorded, so just be mindful of that. And after I introduce myself, we're going to dig into a brief overview of the competition to go over sort of the tracks, key information, as well as what resources are available for you. And towards the end, like I said, there will be time for questions. So just make sure you keep those questions coming in the chat, even as we're chatting. And lastly, this is not the only opportunity for support. There's going to be many, many opportunities over the course of this next month leading up to the deadline of the competition, which we'll share at the end of this meeting, and you'll receive a follow-up email to discuss. So without further ado, I'll hand it back to Meg to get us moving.
Great, thanks, Kayla. So, I bet many of you have already looked over the resources on our website, but just wanted to cover a couple of high-level points about the competition generally before we dig into more specifics and your questions in particular. So the Learning Engineering Tools competition is really meant to solicit ideas from a diverse group of stakeholders around the globe. And so we've really designed the competition to be inclusive and to hear and support talent at all stages of development. And we are really thrilled and humbled by the amount of support that the competition has received this year. Schmidt Futures, along with Ken Griffin, have returned to sponsor the competition. They were the two sponsors from the first running of the competition last year. And we now have the Walton Family Foundation, the Siegel Family Endowment, and the Overdeck Family Foundation, who are also lending their support this year. And so the prize purse will be well over $3 million. The specific amount will be confirmed soon. But we are, thrilled to have these sponsors who are not only excited to support the competition, but are really eager to learn more from the community that is developed through this competition to kind of continue to iterate on their own strategy. You know, a couple key points. This competition is pretty similar to the competition last year. So those of you who have who were familiar with the competition last year, it's quite similar. But a couple of key points to mention that I think are relevant to all, and just flagging, I think someone may still have their, may need to mute themselves. I'm just hearing some typing. So as I mentioned, the competition is meant to be inclusive. And so to do that, we have 2 prize bands for the competition. One is a Catalyst prize. So for that, competitors can request up to $50,000 for an award to advance the proposal that they are describing. And that is really designed for new entrants in the field. So there's no need for any sort of user base or any currently developed product. You really just have to have an idea to be competitive for that prize band. The second prize band is larger. And so there are more eligibility provisions. In particular, there's a requirement for most of the tracks to have at least 10,000 users. And for that prize band, competitors can request up to $250,000. Kind of moving on to another piece that is somewhat different than last year is the competition tracks. And so this year, the competition is really looking to support and generate ideas on pressing challenges and opportunities in education. And so we've identified 4 competition tracks or priority areas that we are looking to hear from competitors on innovative ideas. And so one is accelerated learning in reading and math. Another is around K-12 assessment. One is around higher education and workplace learning. And the last is around research tools. So, you know, proposals should speak to one or multiple of those priority areas in order to be competitive. And we can get into more about how to do that later in the presentation or in Q&A. So, you know, regardless of the priority area, all proposals must address learning engineering. It's in the title of the competition, and it is a really key piece of the competition in general, and one of the factors that really separates out some of the most competitive proposals. And so this slide gives an overview of the way that we define learning engineering. You know, I think a couple of things to think about when you're looking at this is we're looking for tools that are not a silver bullet in education, but are really designed for continuous improvement. And not just continuous improvement within the own tool, but also really add to the information that's available to the field to better understand how learners learn and how we can adapt other tools and platforms and interventions with that information in mind. And so we recognize this is probably one of the more challenging things to grasp in how you are designing your proposal. And so, you know, we really recommend as you're designing your proposal, there's some questions to think through that can help you kind of figure out how best to talk about how your platform or your tool embodies learning engineering. And, you know, I do think this is one of the areas that's really helpful to have more one-off conversations. And so if you're interested, you're welcome to reach out to the tools competition email address, which we can pop in the chat, and we are welcome to kind of think through in your own specific platform what that can mean and how that could look. So I think with that, I will hand it over to Kayla, who will talk a little bit more about the process.
Absolutely, thanks, Meg. So as you all can see, especially those of you who were competitors last year, the tracks for the composition have changed quite a bit, but our process still remains very similar. This competition has a phased evaluation process, which allows for you competitors to build on your proposal at each iteration and grow your team over time. And at each point of the process, at each decision point, we'll be able to give feedback and resources to both people who are moving forward to the next phase, but even if you are not moving forward to a continuing phase, there will be additional resources and support, because as Meg said earlier, one of our big goals for this is not necessarily to announce just a slew of winners, but really to build a community and a network that can support each other moving forward. So you can anticipate those resources coming at each point. Now, in terms of actual deadlines and what those points are in the process, we are gearing up towards our first big deadline, which is October 1st, 2021. And this is just for your initial concepts, and you can submit those concepts through a form that is linked in our website, which I'll share in just a few moments. It is not a write-up or one form, so please make sure that you're looking over that form before you begin developing your proposal, so you know exactly what questions we're asking for this initial collection. After that first phase of review, we are going to invite promising solutions to submit a detailed proposal. And what I mean by promising solutions is really just as long as the proposal and idea aligns with the criteria for the competition. So we're just making sure it's a good fit and has potential. And as long as our team of reviewers thinks that the proposal is a fit, we'll move forward to phase 2. And at that point, between phase 1 and phase 2, competitors, or you all, will have the opportunity to receive more feedback from our team and the team of reviewers to improve your proposal for that second phase submission, which has a deadline of December 17th. Once the more detailed proposals are submitted on December 17th, they will be reviewed by the same review team as phase 1, as well as some additional expert reviewers and judges. And finally, finalists will be notified in February of 2022, where you'll be invited to pitch your idea, pitch your proposal to a panel of judges that March, so March 2022. At each stage of review, so between phase 1 and phase 2, but also phase 2 and phase 3, proposals will be evaluated on these 5 criteria that you can see on the slide that's being shared. Their potential for impact and likelihood to improve learning, attention to equity to support learning of historically marginalized populations, ability to support rapid experimentation and continuous improvement, i.e. learning engineering, as Meg was just describing, their ability to scale and attract additional users and domains over time, and of course, team passion, team experience, and readiness. And within each track of the competition, proposals will be evaluated based on this criteria, but they will only be evaluated against each other. In other words, proposals in the assessment track will not be competing against proposals in the K through 12 track. And proposals in the catalyst band within the assessment track will not be competing against proposals in the other prize band within the assessment track. So we are kind of looking at each track and each prize band as separate and using this criteria to evaluate. All right, so with that, let me share the resources where you can find all these details. Might just take a moment to load. All right, so you can see, everyone, this is our tools competition webpage on the Futures Forum on Learning site. To get to this page, if you go to futuresforumonlearning.org, you just go up to the menu that says Tools Competition, click, of course, 2021 Tools Competition. Once you're there, you'll be able to see one translated document. So if English isn't your first language, you will be able to see some other options to review the information about the competition. I should flag, though, that all proposals must be submitted in English. All right, we have more of an overview of the competition on this page, as well as descriptions of each of the tracks that we just went over. So if you need a refresher on the tracks, you can find them on this page. You can also find a detailed description of the evaluation criteria again, and the eligibility quiz if you need some assistance figuring out which prize band to compete in. And I'll look at the I'll show the eligibility quiz in just a moment. On this page up at the top, we of course have our how to compete page. So if you want some more information about the actual process that I just went over and how you can compete, go here. Again, this page is also translated into the languages you can see here. This goes into more detail about each phase and the deadlines, as well as the timeline for each phase. So you can see it on this page. You'll also see at the very, very bottom, more details on the eligibility, or sorry, the prize bands, if you'd like to review the criteria. Again, there is a eligibility quiz. So if you feel like you need a little bit of guidance on which one works, or you feel like you're between these two prize bands, we strongly recommend taking that eligibility quiz so that you're able to see kind of more of what we're looking for. Without further ado, let's take a look at what that eligibility quiz looks like. It also is just a sheet. So once you click the link, you'll be directed here. Just answer the questions. It won't be asking you to submit a proposal or any details about your proposal, just information about your team and your idea. Once you are ready to submit your proposal and submit your idea, you'll want to go up to, of course, the Submit Your Concept button, another sheet that you can access through our webpage. Like I said, I really recommend looking over this form first before you draft up all of your answers, just so you know what questions that we're asking. All right, so let me exit out of here. All right, and I think the last thing I'll flag as well is that within those pages, you can find frequently asked questions. So we really recommend looking at our FAQ page if you have any questions before reaching out to the tools competition email. But of course, you're always welcome to reach out to that tools competition at thelearningagency.com email. There are also our official rules. So I really do recommend giving the official rules a review. That can also just help you in terms of figuring out the logistics for the competition. And thank you, Janessa, from our team, for adding these links into the chat, which you can also find. Okay, and so with that, I think I'll turn it back to Meg.
Great. So, we really just want to start hearing from all of you. We're just eager to hear your thoughts and really want to make sure that you have as many answers at the end of this call as possible. So would love to just start in. And I see the way that we'll do this is we will, at some points, we'll just read the question that came from the chat, and other times we'll try to call on the person who asked. And so I see an email from Pim on their tool. And if Pim, if you're still around and you want to ask your question, please feel free.
Sure. Hi. Sorry, I wasn't prepped for that, but gave me a sec. So yeah, the main thing we were kind of running into is these 4 tracks seem fairly specific in how they are supposed to work. And we feel like our tool really matches sort of the underlying concept of this competition, but doesn't really snugly fit into any of those 4 tracks. And I was kind of wondering if that should be a reason not to submit, because you're saying, hey, we're focusing only on these tracks. Or if it's more so like, hey, if you feel like your tool matches the competition, then just fill for one of the tracks and we'll take it from there. That was kind of my question.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, I would say that the tracks are there for a reason, and we are really interested in those. But I think there's a lot of room in many of them to adapt proposals accordingly. So I think, without knowing more about your tool, I think there's usually a way to find an in, and it's more about just kind of connecting the dots for the reviewers. So I think if you feel it's aligned, I think, you know, you're welcome to reach out to us and kind of test it more specifically. And, you know, we're happy to be a sounding board in figuring out what that would look like. But I do think the most competitive proposals will mention and discuss the tracks in some way.
Perfect, thanks.
Great. I think we have a kind of more technical question on just can you download the questions from the for the initial proposal form online. And if you if you go to the submission page, you'll see a little link that says it should be there. If it's not, we'll check this after, but there should be a Google Doc that you can just download and make the notes from there. So that should be there. But our team will check to make sure it's there. And then I see Nada has raised their hand. If you would like to go ahead and share your question.
Yeah, thanks. It's Nada from George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. So you mentioned that there's a Catalyst prizes up to 50K and there's mid-scale large prizes 50 to 250K. So you also mentioned that the Catalyst prize, like the one up to 50K, it may be more of a concept of a tool versus an actual like working tool or an actual prototype. So I'm wondering if the process for submitting the application for the competition for something like that is the same as submitting for the mid-scale, large competition. So is the process the same for all of the, for all of the, levels, if you will? So, because we might have like two ideas. One is a concept idea, and the other maybe, let's say, a tool that's already prototyped. So is the process for applying for this competition the same, independent of where you are with the platform or the idea? Thanks.
Sure, that's a great question. Yeah, I think the one piece of that is like, what does the actual form look like? And it is the same form for phase one. But I think the detail that you'll describe in your proposal is likely pretty different. I think the tools that are existing, I think you can speak a little bit to kind of what exists, what's currently there, the progress you've made, and any information on the impact of it. So I think the current form, as if you've looked at it on the website, is pretty flexible. And so I think it is written in a way that it applies to both tracks. For phase two, we haven't yet finalized the specific templates for those. They will be different by track. And there are usually a couple of questions on there that ask different information depending on where you are in the trajectory.
Okay, great, thanks.
Great.
But you guys are open to talk with us before we do anything, right? I heard you say that
Absolutely.
if we want to set up like just a half an hour meeting to give you a sense of what our ideas are, you're open to that, correct?
Yeah, so what you need to do is email the tools competition email address, which is up on the screen now. And someone on the team will send you back a Calendly link, and you can select a time that works for you. And it's an opportunity to, to just kind of to discuss what your proposal could look like. I think one thing that has not come up yet on this call, but often does, is can you submit more than one proposal? And you absolutely can. And so what we are very cognizant of the fact that, between phase one and phase two, phase two, you have to submit a much longer proposal. And it's a lot more work. And so we are happy to work with you, especially between phase 1 and phase 2, to make sure if there are multiple proposals in the mix, that you are potentially only working on the one that we think is the best fit. So I think that's a good way that you can kind of cast a wide net initially, but then have more of that kind of one-on-one conversation with feedback, so that we want to be really conscious of everyone's time.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. So I think going off the list here, so apologize if I'm not going in the order, but I think Victor raised his hand soon after. So Victor, if you want to share your question.
Hi, thanks. I have a couple of maybe rapid fire questions, which I think I know some of the answers to, but I just want to verify.
Sure.
So this is a competition open to for-profits and startups as well. It's not just nonprofits and university folks, right?
Correct. The one caveat to that is the research track proposal. The tax status of the entity does not matter, but the tool that you're providing has to be offered free or at cost. That requirement does not apply to any of the other tracks.
Good to know. Okay. Then related to that possibly is, if you are a startup or a for-profit, I assume you folks will also entertain proposals that are sort of done in partnership with a nonprofit or another organization.
Absolutely. It's totally up to you of how you're building your team. And I also think one thing to note is one of the reasons we have the staggered evaluation process is you can build out your team over time. So if you are looking for a partnership and that hasn't yet happened by October 1st, you can apply with that information and then kind of build that out in the next phase. Okay.
And then last thing for now, at least, is, and this goes to, I think, one of the questions that Zuni asked as well. So I +1 that in the chat.
Sure.
Is there a preference from the reviewer's perspective of something that's brand spanking new, a new tool, a new product that is, just hasn't seen the light of day yet? Maybe it's only prototype phase, or could it be an existing product that's already in market and being used? And then maybe a sort of a sub point under that question is, what about if the latter is okay? Can you request, I guess, funding or put in a proposal for basically extending that existing product that's already in the market in some way with a new feature, a new market, something of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. So no, I don't think there's a preference for brand new versus adding on to a tool. But there has to be something new to the proposal. You can't just, you can't apply with an existing tool that's been on the market for a while.
Okay. Oh, actually, sorry, there was one other thing. I +1
Sure.
Ogden's question as well regarding, he said in the slide deck, the first track specifies elementary and secondary reading and math, but on the website it says literacy, presumably including writing instead of reading, which is accurate. We had the same question. Great
question. Literacy is correct. So apologies for the error on that, but yeah, literacy is correct. So reading and math count. Reading and writing count.
Writing. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure. We hit quite a bench with that. Way to go. I think, not sure in the order, but I think I see a question from Phil. Phil, do you want to share your question out loud?
Sure, thanks for asking it. My approach to supporting research and learning science extends past A/B testing and randomized controlled trials. Specifically, it would involve pattern matching and data mining activities with focus on ipsative or within individual change. Is that of interest as an approach to supporting learning science?
And this is for the research track?
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the tough thing about putting examples in there is they can be limiting. So I think this is one area that we're really eager to see what ideas exist. And so I would say, yeah, absolutely. And if you want to talk more in depth about specifics, happy to share. But, I think this is one area that we're really looking for people to kind of share what's needed and why is that, and eager to hear all sorts of new ideas.
Great. I'll be in contact. Thanks.
Great. I think Anita had her hand raised. Anita, do you want to share your question?
Yep. Hi, Anita Delahaye from Argos Education. I think our proposal may or could fit in more than one of the tracks. And I think at the beginning of the talk, I heard one of you say that that's appropriate and acceptable. But then when you pulled up the form, the submission form for the proposal, it looked like a radio box and not a multi-select. So I was just wondering how we would, is it in fact true that we could submit to multiple tracks with the same proposal? And if so, how do we do that technically? Or
Yeah,
even also, what are the ramifications of doing so, better or worse kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So in the submission form, you'll see that you have to select a primary track, but then you can select any secondary tracks. So, and as many as you want. So you can put it in as many as you want. What we will do, because the proposals are evaluated within each track, we will work with you to make a determination between phase 1 and phase 2 of which track we think you'd be most competitive in. And then from there, for phase 2, when there's a specific the specific template for the proposal for each more detailed proposal in phase 2, we would kind of guide you to go toward that track, because there'll be specific requirements or just guiding questions to really connect your proposal to the track. And so we want to make sure that, I think one of the concerns obviously is if you're casting too wide in that, you're not talking specifically enough about any one. So what we want to do is you can definitely indicate any for phase 1, and then we'll work with you to figure out what the best way is in phase 2. And that can be more of a personalized process. But so yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, great, good answer. And I just looked at that form so quick, I didn't even see the second question. So that's super helpful, and also the description of the process. Thank you.
Yeah, but no worries about
Don't worry.
If no worries about which you select as a primary track. That really is not going to make a big difference. It's the kind of determining factor is when you move to phase 2.
And in phase 1, if you select more than one, is it actually evaluated in each of those phases?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, in each of those tracks, sorry.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Great. I think we have another question from Victor. Victor, is that still from before, or do you have another question?
Sorry, never lowered my hand. No new question.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Great. While we have a lull from questions, we are joined by one of the winners from last year. The team Project Set won last year, and I would love to invite them to share kind of their overall reflections on the on participation and what they learned and any advice they have to competitors this year.
Sure, Megan, Kayla, thank you for giving me the opportunity. So by way of introduction, my name is Dhruva Banerjee. I'm from a company called Project Set, and we were one of the winners last year, joining in from London. So in terms of our experience, I couldn't just recommend this opportunity enough. And the reason is I think there are 3 things that I would take away primarily from our experience. One is the whole process of going through, especially the second phase, leading up to the final pitch and after the pitch, I think we got access to an incredible pool of expert resources that really helped shape our thinking, finalize our thinking. So in fact, before the final pitch at the end of the second phase, we were able to sort of do a sort of pseudo pitch to an expert who helped us sort of fine tune our proposition. Again, in terms of the technical aspects of the tool as well as how we pitch, which was fantastic. After we won it, we obviously were given access to an incredible pool of resources, including the learning engineering community, which is incredible. So that whole access completely, I think, provides a much higher level of inputs that would enrich the tool that we were trying to build. So that was number one. The second thing was the great experience we had working with the learning agency team, because while it's true that when we given a proposal, we have a view of what we're going to create, but like in any innovation process, not everything runs as per plan. And we found the team incredibly flexible and understanding in terms of when we had to shift priorities or some of the stuff, and they were very helpful as well. So for example, because of COVID, we had to actually postpone some of our learning engineering components to a later point in time. And they understood the reason and they helped us sort of connect to the right people. So that was fantastic. And the third thing that we found incredible was that the whole engagement with the community doesn't end with the competition. You actually become a part of the community and it stays on. So for example, we went through the competition last year. We sort of developed the tool this year, and then we in fact just rolled it out. We are seeing the impacts. It's all sort of behind, but we are still in touch. And in fact, there are also a lot of benefits of that. For example, we recently had the privilege of getting an intern who joined us and is starting to work with us. And that all came from the Learning Agency Network as well. So the point being that by staying as an active member of the part of the community, I think there are other ways that you would find it could actually improve the work that you're doing, both in terms of the quality of the tool as well as the impact. So those are the three things that come to mind. I'm happy to answer any other question that you may have.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Thank you, Dhruva. That was, we're very flattered and glad we were able to provide support.
And I think there was a question on what project that Dhruva was speaking about. And so one thing to note, and Janessa, if you could pop in the chat, that'd be great. The winners from last year are on the tools competition website. And this is the project set. Actually forget the title of your tool. So Dhruva, you might have to you might have to help me out.
Not a problem at all. I can just give you a quick 1 minute sort of snapshot of that.
Yeah, great.
We were working on a tool called PALS, which is an acronym for Peer Assisted Learning Systems, because there is enough research to show that peer assisted learning is very effective, particularly in the middle school and the high school level. So we created this tool specifically with the sort of students from the backward or economically deprived community in mind, because these are students who do not have a support network at home because they come from families where they are the first generation that's going to school. And with the onset of COVID, they actually lost the peer network because they were not going to school, they were learning online. So what we created was a moderated tool that was moderated by the teacher, but where the students could actually have bilateral and multilateral conversations focused on certain problems that they're finding it difficult to solve. So what it led to was creating a community where they were co-solving problems together. The community was getting exposed to a broader set of problems. And it also eased the teacher's workload because the teacher became the third port of call. In the first instance, when a student faced a problem, they would actually approach a peer to help solve that problem. In the second instance, if that didn't work, it would be an AI tool that would actually offer hints. So again, there's enough research to show that hint-based problem solving actually is very effective in the longer term from learning outcomes perspective. And finally, if that didn't work either, then the teacher would step in. So that way the workload on the teacher would also be much lower. So we have rolled that out. We recently rolled it out and we are seeing the initial results, which are very encouraging. Would be happy to sort of discuss more bilaterally if you are interested. Thank you.
Pals, I don't know how, I used to literally have all these like memorized and I had a blip. So apologize for that.
I did want to follow up just with a quick question, Dhruva, as you've been talking. You were, of course, like I said, we're flattered that you had such a great experience and that we've been able to support this project. I would love if you could answer, just for the people who have never gone through this process before, if there is something that you would wish you had known at the beginning of the process, or even just a part of the process that you perhaps wanted, or perhaps like you would approach differently now than you did when you were first going through this process?
Sure, I think it's a great question. I mean, there are probably quite a few different things, but the main thing that I would always recommend is it won't hurt to actually have more people look at your proposal at early stages and comment on it, because one of the things that we did initially was, because it was the first time, we actually were trying to understand the scope of the different sort of areas that you mentioned, and we felt that initially when we started, we were trying to force fit ourselves into a particular scope. And then after the first set of conversations, we realized that wasn't necessary. We have to do what we believe needs to be done. So we actually sort of did that, and we created a proposal which we were not really too bothered about whether it fits into one scope, because as I think Meg, you mentioned a short while ago, that we believe that it fits into two different categories, put it there, and in the second phase you'll guide them to eventually. And I think the thing that really helped was I remember we had those help hours or consulting hours that you were offering on the phone, where we could actually, even before submitting the proposal, run it past you and you would give that feedback. So that session really helped. So I think use up those opportunities, and also not just restrict those kind of sessions with people from the learning agency, but if you have opportunity to link to other communities and get that feedback, I think that's fantastic, because we found it incredibly useful to fine tune and sharpen our proposal and made it more meaningful. The other resource that we used was the Learning Engineering Forum, which is an online forum where you can reach out to researchers pretty early on. And we did that. We actually spoke to 3 different learning engineering researchers, and we got slightly different set of inputs, which helped us understand what works and what doesn't work. So I would encourage you to sort of reach out to these communities and get more inputs if you can.
Thank you so much. That's a really great overview of your experience, and I think is incredibly valuable to the people who are here. And Janessa, it would be great if you could pop in the Learning Engineering Google group for those of everyone who's here can join. That's the kind of group that Dhruva was just talking about, where you're able to get connected with researchers. I should also say that sometime down the line, I know those of you who have signed up for continued emails through that pop-up that we were talking about before on the webpage, we are going to be sharing a list of researchers as we get closer to the deadline. So if that's something that you're interested in, that'll certainly be forthcoming. But thank you so much. We really appreciate you giving us some insight into your experience.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I think we do have, as we've been chatting and as Dhruva has been giving us this wealth of knowledge, we've had a few questions come in and a few hands get raised. So I see Maria, I believe you have your hands raised if you wanted to ask your question.
Actually, I think you just answered my second question, because I was going to ask Dhruva about these learning forum people that he spoke to. So you're saying you're going to send out a list of these people, or the way to get in touch with them, or how will that work?
Yes. So there's actually 2 different groups that he was referring to. The first is our Learning Engineering Google group, which my colleague Janessa has just added to the chat. If you aren't already a member, just request to be accepted a member of our team. We'll add you shortly, probably within the next 24 hours. It doesn't take long.
Okay. And you do that through this link?
Yep, through the link that's in the chat. And
okay.
That group is really just a group of ed tech designers, education researchers, people who are really invested in this work and this space. And so if you want additional feedback, if you want someone to help review, or if you're looking to partner with a research, posting your idea and details about what you're looking for in that Google group is a great way to get connected to that group. It's really expanded quite rapidly, and it's full of people who competed last year as well. And so just like Dhruva can add to the insight from their own experience.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So it's been a really wonderful group and community that's been burgeoning over the last year. And so highly recommend it to everyone who's here to join. You can post whatever question you want. I would say they might even be more knowledgeable about the kind of research component than even our team. Not to speak, of course, me and Meg are very knowledgeable and happy to answer questions, but they'll be able to get into the nitty gritty and talk about those partnership opportunities. The other thing that Dhruva was talking about was a list of researchers. Now, we at the Learning Agency partner with a lot of different researchers in the learning engineering and just research, education research space. And so if you're looking to partner with a researcher, or you don't have one that you're already connected with, you can reach out to us at, of course, toolscompetition@thelearningagency.com. give us a little bit of a sense of what you're looking for. And our team will look into our list of researchers and be able to connect you to them. And we'll be kind of flagging that as an opportunity in one of the emails that we'll be sending through this like email list that you can sign up for by filling in your email in that pop-up that's on the website.
I have one more quick question.
Of course.
This is the, one of those questions that, I feel like the student that asks you the question after you've answered it 3 times already, but I'm still not clear. When I filled out that eligibility form, there was one question that said, do you have I guess it was like an initial product, and do you have 10,000 users? Now, suppose you have an initial product, but you don't have 10,000 users. Is the 10,000 users the critical thing there to apply for that second award or the larger award?
It is, yeah, it is. And the reason for that is we're really looking for tools for that already have some scale.
Got it.
And so that the 10,000 users is kind of where we've hit the mark. As you can see in that, we don't define what that means. We don't define active users. So I think, there is some wiggle room in that regard. So if you can kind of, and you'll actually in the phase 2 proposal, there's specific language around there. It's like, how many users do you have? And you can kind of defend that decision. But I think that, again, the reason there is just, as all of you know on this phone, like scale is incredibly hard to get. And so getting to that 10,000 users, we see as kind of a key hurdle. That said, I will say you can look at the winners from last year in the Catalyst Award, when actually the Catalyst Award last year was capped at $25,000. So this year it's double. And we did that specifically because we found that there's a really wide range of proposals within that catalyst. Some had just ideas that were completely getting on the ground. Nothing was developed, and others had proposals that were already launched, and they were just really working to get scale and growth and refine. And so, our thinking of really bumping up the amount for the Catalyst Prize this year was that would allow for greater flexibility in that prize band, recognizing we were setting kind of a hard threshold for the higher prize band.
So if you have a product, but it doesn't have 10,000 users, you're still eligible for the Catalyst.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
great.
And as you can see, there's a number of it's a little bit harder to tell this in the descriptions, but there are a number of proposals that were Catalyst this year that had like viable products that were already developed. They were just kind of working to get scale.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Great. I see Victor Victor, do you want to share your question?
Yeah, so I put it in the chat, but just in case it got missed. What are the intellectual property implications of developing technology with prize money? So, sometimes there are asks of the funder, sometimes there are requirements of the funder of it being, available freely and, being kind of openly available, et cetera. So just I'm wondering if there's any catches there.
Yep. So as I mentioned, that there are no catches on IP. As I mentioned before, for the research track, the tool has to be available free or at cost, but you do not need to share the IP. Great, and then I see a question from Jerry. Jerry, do you want to share yours out loud? I'll happily ask him for it. The question was, how do you determine users in the existing product? As I mentioned, we actually put that on you. And so in your second proposal, you'll need to justify how you have these users. And so we do ask for 10,000 active users, but we do not specify that has to be daily, weekly, monthly, but you need to show why they constitute as active users. And I think we have probably time for one or two more questions. And I see Phil has raised his hand.
Thank you. Same topic area about partnership with digital learning platform. What do you mean by partnership?
So I think the key thing there, again, for the folks who are on this call, and again, it's somewhat complicated because there's 4 tracks. So the eligibility criteria for the research tools track is we ask for the platform to have some sort of partnership or with a digital learning platform, or essentially what we're looking for there is access to data. And so just as the other 3 tracks have this 10,000 user requirement to show scale, we're looking for the research tracks that there is sufficient data in the back end or connected to the research platform that it's able to support robust research. And so, the way that we think that is likely to happen is there's some sort of connection to a digital learning platform. But if you can show how you have that in another way, whether it be kind of just like data from whatever source it is, that can constitute as well. But again, what we're looking for there is just some sort of robust data set. Does that help?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Great. And I think we'll wrap it up with one last question from Tina. Do you want to share it?
Yes, I was just wondering if we are in the midst of onboarding a large number of students and educators over the next couple months, can we say that we have our 10,000 active users if we're in that process currently?
Yeah, so I think this is probably more of an individualized question. If you have proof, like if proof is a hard word to say, but if you have clear evidence that you're going to get there by phase 3, I think you can apply for the larger award. I do think most people, I've found that it's just like scaling is a lot harder than people think. And so if you don't have it right then, we're going to be looking for pretty clear evidence that you're getting there, whether that be partnership with schools that they're going to launch within a next semester, whatever it may be. I think that's where we'll look at in terms of how we assess that. But again, feel free to reach out because that's probably more of an individualized question where we can provide more guidance.
Great, thank you.
Great. Well, the hour went by quickly. I really appreciate everyone's time. One thing I just want to note is that we were blown away last year with the quality of the pool of proposals. And we recognize that the competition would be nothing without the time and energy and ideas that all came out of the people who are participating. And so we can't say enough how much we appreciate you guys sharing this hour with us to hear more about it. All the contributions you're making to the field. And if you do choose to participate, we're just incredibly grateful of the time commitment. And so our goal in that is to really provide equal support in terms of feedback to you and resources so that regardless of the final winners, it's a valuable process for everyone who's involved. So with that, we just want to kind of re-up all of the opportunities to get more information. Again, please join some of the office hours, take advantage of the opportunity to get specific feedback by reaching out to the tools competition. There's more information on the Futures for Men and Learning series that will happen in September, which will share more information about each of the tracks that are in the competition and kind of share more about how all of us are thinking about those. And I think can be helpful as you refine your proposal. And so, please take advantage of those opportunities, reach out to us for some of the resources we shared. And if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And a huge thank you to Truva for being here and sharing his experiences as well. We are really humbled for the opportunity to work with them. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.